Valentino Rossi has finally spoken out, breaking the silence that has surrounded the Motogp legend. In a surprising statement, the racing icon said that Motogp has now turned into a disaster. Not only Rossi, but also World Champion Francesco Bagnaia spoke out, as if to emphasize that there is a serious problem that is currently affecting the most prestigious motorcycle racing world. What actually caused Rossi to make such a harsh statement, and is it true that Motogp is now on the verge of a crisis? Let's discuss it. The 2025 Motogp season has officially passed its first 5 rounds. In the midst of the spotlight, usually filled with technical analysis, race strategy and dynamics between riders, the Motogp world was suddenly shaken by a voice that had not been heard for a long time. The voice of a legend, a voice that was once the pulse of this sport, Valentino Rossi. In his prime, Rossi was not just a racer. He was a global icon, a true entertainer who combined speed, ingenuity and a rebellious spirit into a package that set the track and television screens ablaze. But today, the legend is no longer on a motorcycle. He is watching from the sidelines, and from there, he made a pointed statement that surprised many. Watching the races from the outside now is a disaster. I suffer. Rossi's statement was not just a momentary outburst of emotion. It was the cry of a man who has dedicated his life to the sport. Someone who has watched the transformation of Motogp from the inside, from the outside, and now sees something he feels has been lost. The soul of racing itself. Valentino Rossi may have retired in 2021, but he has never really left Motogp. He now owns the Muni VR46 racing team, promotes young riders through the VR46 Academy and, most personally, is the older brother of Luca Marini, one of the active riders on the grid today. But being a spectator makes things different. Rossi admits that he feels more tense watching from the outside than when he was racing himself. I have a younger brother who races. I have kids from the academy who I consider family. I can't relax. I'm more afraid of them failing, crashing or getting hurt than when I'm racing myself. It's an emotional side of a rider that is rarely revealed. Rossi, who for years has been a cheerful and confident figure, now expresses fear and helplessness as a spectator. And that is where his concerns about the direction of Motogp today come from. Modern Motogp is full of fierce competition and sophisticated technology. The time difference between riders is a matter of milliseconds. Teams such as Ducati, KTM, Yamaha and Aprilia now compete on an almost equal footing. But in an age of data, aerodynamic calculations and sophisticated gadgetry such as ride height devices, Rossi feels that something is missing, a sense of humanity in racing. Too much technology, not enough drama. Motogp is like a perfect machine now, but without a soul. Rossi is not against progress. He even admits that the adrenaline level on the Motogp grid is still the highest compared to any other event, including Formula One. But there is a bitter note to his admiration. For Rossi, speed is not everything. Motogp is about stories, cold-blooded competition and strong characters that ignite the emotions of the spectators. Rossi's statement also reopened an old wound that had not yet fully closed, the 2015 season. In that season Rossi almost won his 10th World Championship title, but it was cut short by a major controversy involving Marc Marquez and Jorge Lorenzo. At the time, Rossi accused Marquez of deliberately disrupting the title fight. Lorenzo then made a sharp comment to the Spanish media. It must be painful for Rossi to realize that there are young riders who are faster than him. This could be his last chance to win the title. And indeed it was. Rossi never climbed the World Championship podium again after that drama-filled season. The emotional wounds from the Marquez incident, as well as the heated rivalry with Casey Stoner, who had once described Rossi as a rider whose ambition exceeded his talent, were still raw. At Jerez in 2011, when Rossi made a risky maneuver on a wet track that caused them both to fall, Stoner greeted him in the Honda paddock with sarcastic applause. The moment became a symbol of the internal conflict between Rossi's image as a public hero and the bitter reality of being an opponent on the track. Meanwhile, Pecco also gave his opinion on Rossi's fears. I really respect what Vale said. Not only has he been my idol since I was a kid, he has also been a mentor, a teacher, even like family to me. So when he speaks, everyone in the paddock should listen, because he knows exactly what has made Motogp so great in the past. I can understand why Vale feels this way. Racing has changed now. As riders we are forced to read more data than just overtaking on instinct. Every lap, every corner, everything is calculated like a science. Sometimes I also miss the wild and spontaneous side of racing, the side that used to be the hallmark of MotoGP. But on the other hand, we have to accept that times have changed. Bikes, tires, aerodynamics, everything has evolved. The challenges are different. Maybe the emotions are more hidden now, but that doesn't mean they're gone. I believe that our task as a new generation is to keep the racing spirit alive while adapting to the times. And I hope that through our battles on the track Vale can see that flame again. MotoGP may not be the same as it used to be. But I want Vale to know that we are still fighting with our hearts and carrying the legacy he left behind, in every corner, in every moment. Valentino Rossi's great name in the world of motorcycle racing has never really faded. But as time goes on, many have begun to ask, is the legend still fully involved in the world that made his name great? Is VR46 a true form of his true dedication to racing, or is it now just a business entity? These questions arise, especially when Rossi is now more often seen behind the scenes than on track. However, on several occasions, such as when he was present in the MotoGP paddock in Qatar and Jerez this year, Rossi has proved that his soul is still closely connected to the pulse of MotoGP. He is present not only physically, but also emotionally. Rossi himself admitted that watching his former riders such as Francesco Bagnaia and Franco Morbidelli compete on track gave him a different emotional boost. There is pride, there is hope, but also a fear that is no less great. I like to support them. When they race, I watch with passion. When they're not there, I still watch, but it feels different. It's less gripping, Rossi said in a tone that reflected how deeply emotional his connection to the world still is. Perhaps the most hurtful words uttered by Valentino Rossi in his comments were when he described MotoGP as a disaster to watch. But make no mistake, the disaster Rossi was referring to was not because the sport lacked speed, technology, or competition. On the contrary, MotoGP is technically faster and more complex than ever before. But what's missing is something far more essential: the soul, the emotion, the human story. Rossi expressed his nostalgia for a time when rivalries between riders were the talk of the world. A time when the focus was not just on lap times or electronic data, but on the drama on the track, the burning grudges and the victories that carried deep personal meaning. Now, even as Ducati struggles with internal tensions between its riders, everything still feels too neat, too polite. Too clinical, said Rossi. For the legend, this is the crux of the matter. MotoGP needs character, not just speed. It needs stories, not just statistics. It needs people, not just machines. This sentence is a slap in the face of modern racing, a reminder that behind all the innovation and strategy, fans are still looking for something to feel, not just to admire. Valentino Rossi has reignited the debate about the future of MotoGP. With his honest, emotional, and yearning voice, he reminds us that beyond the incredible speed and cutting-edge technology, MotoGP is about people, about the passion, the excitement, and the stories that bring fans to their seats. Rossi's harsh statement is no ordinary criticism. He speaks not as a former rider, but as a symbol of a golden era full of passion and meaning. The question now is whether the MotoGP world is ready to open its ears to the inner cry of a legend. Have your say below.